citizen.
You don't know how to fix the holes in our ozone layer. You don't know how to bring the salmon back up a dead stream. You don't know how to bring back an animal now extinct. And you can't bring back the forest that once grew where there is now a desert.
You have ignored us in the past and you will ignore us again. We have run out of excuses and we are running out of time.
Show us your faithfulness. Show us your trustworthiness. Show us your honesty. Prove us wrong. We desperately need you to prove us wrong. God help us all.
Hello and a very warm welcome. You are watching Gravitas with me, Modi Brics. Here's a look at what's lined up for you on the show tonight. Tonight on the show, we focus in the beginning on the three big headlines coming out of Asia. It's a story of how India, China and Russia are dominating headlines for different reasons. We are starting off with what's happening at the BRICS summit. As we piece together the developments and the statements from the leaders there, we also dissect the optics and what's happening behind the scenes. And we ask if China is exploiting BRICS in the pursuit of its own interests. Is it using the platform as a propaganda vehicle? We also tell you about the sharp contrast between the economic realities of India and China, how India is now replacing China as the world's factory. While for China, deflation is the flavor of the season, it is a state of affairs that is grim to say the least, in sharp contrast to India's bright prospects and how it is increasingly becoming the chosen destination as the Make in India mission continues to cross milestones. Also on the show for you tonight is Wagner, the world's richest mercenary-industrial group. We tell you what the numbers say. We also ask why Vladimir Putin is wary of punishing the Wagner chief. As Finland considers a ban on Swastika to tackle racism, we ask if this is a token measure. Can this actually help in solving Europe's deep-rooted problem of racism? We also tell you about an epidemic plaguing the UK. It's not got to do with the new strain of the Wuhan virus. It's actually about the menace of shoplifting. We tell you what the numbers say and how deep entrenched the problem is. There is growing outrage over the Spanish soccer chief's unwanted kiss to a player. We tell you what the row is all about. What would you do if you got stuck in a lift for 2 hours? panic, fear the worst? Well, we get to the story of an 8-year-old child who completed his homework while being stuck in a lift for 2 hours. Is China exploiting BRICS and turning it into a propaganda vehicle for its own interests? And as you think about this question, have a look at the visuals on your screen. That was the Chinese President Xi Jinping receiving a 21-gun salute from South Africa's forces. An honor that's, by the way, not been accorded to any other BRICS leader visiting South Africa. President Cyril Ramaphosa also bestowed on the Chinese leader the Order of South Africa. Any idea why? Why is Xi Jinping receiving this special treatment? Well, that's because the Chinese have scored a brownie point by turning this into a state visit. Xi Jinping, you see, is on a state visit of South Africa. On Monday, Xi Jinping arrived in South Africa close to midnight for his 4th state visit to South Africa, and South Africa rolled out the red carpet for the leader. He was received by the host president, Cyril Ramaphosa. He was welcomed with a cultural song and dance performance. He received a military parade by the South African National Defense Forces. And then on Tuesday, the Chinese president met Ramaphosa as part of the official state visit. This year marks 25 years of diplomatic ties between South Africa and China, and Ramaphosa has said that South Africa has a great deal to learn from China's development story. He hailed China for lifting nearly 800 million people out of poverty in 40 years. All of this happened before the BRICS summit in Johannesburg. All this song and dance, so Xi Jinping can push China's image as a voice of the global south. It is a golden opportunity for Xi Jinping to bolster China's image as a global leader. And it happens to coincide with the 15th BRICS summit, where leaders from Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa are meeting to discuss the future of the bloc and how hard it pushes back against a world order dominated by the West. But China, for that matter, comes with its own agenda. You see, it wants to expand the bloc. It wants to turn BRICS into a support organization for its geopolitical interests. It wants to use BRICS to promote its Belt and Road Initiative, and it wants to promote its brand of anti-US rhetoric and also woo Africa.
We have always believed that China and South Africa are major developing countries and emerging markets with significant influence. We need to be global partners in upholding the global justice. We need to strengthen strategic collaboration, practice true multilateralism, and promote the expansion of the representation and voice of southern countries in global governance. We firmly support the construction of African integration. We will support a substantial progress in African Union's ascension to the G20 this year. We support South Africa to play a greater role in international and regional affairs.
The BRICS summit holds a hard geopolitical edge for China, and here's why. Over the weekend, US President Joe Biden hosted his Japanese and South Korean counterparts at Camp David. It marked a deepening tripartite alliance right on China's doorstep. And in response, the Chinese President Xi Jinping is making only his second foreign trip of the year to South Africa. In fact, he will be touting BRICS and China's key role within it as an example of a different world order. Countries like Indonesia, Argentina, Saudi Arabia are all knocking on the door. Leaders from more than 60 countries expected to be in attendance. For China, an expanding bloc would present a vehicle for its more inclusive worldview, quote unquote. China's long-term goal, essentially, is to change the world order into a Sino-centric one. China also has a larger objective as it grapples with its own faltering economy. So, what is China's motive? The topic of BRICS being a productive investment destination in a globalizing world is no longer relevant. South Africa's economy is not in good shape. Russia is facing isolation over the Ukraine war. The once booming economy of China is slowing. Only India has become an attractive destination in this regard, especially as the world moves to de-risk supply chains and move out of China. The issue of BRICS expansion is therefore coming in a very different geopolitical and geo-economic context. It is China which sees its influence waning and therefore wants to expand its influence globally so that it can set itself up as the rival power to the United States. It can bring the potential new members into its economic orbit more tightly. But if BRICS follows China, the group will likely become another avenue for anti-US rhetoric, which cannot be helpful as it risks losing the ability to deliver concrete benefits to developing countries. And this is precisely the kind of scenario that India fears. India suspects that a swift expansion could enable Beijing to give the bloc an anti-Western flavor. And for India, BRICS is an important forum for its vision of a multipolar world order. Equality between BRICS members is its fundamental characteristic, and expansion could threaten to disrupt this balance by pitting India against China. And for now, India finds an ally in Brazil. Bloc member Brazil's largest trading partner is China, but its latest foreign direct investor is the United States. And Brazil is equally wary of losing influence within the bloc, by the way. It stands with New Delhi in resisting China's bid to add new members. But many countries have expressed interest in joining BRICS. Iran and Argentina have shown interest in formally joining the group, while Russia and South Africa are on board with China. India is aware that China is looking to utilize this forum as a way to boost its geopolitical might. India has focused BRICS discussions on South-South economic and financial cooperation projects. India has also pushed for initiatives to reduce global reliance on the US dollar-based payment system. It has also pushed reforms of international financial institutions. Most importantly, India has used the BRICS platform, the BRICS discussion, to give a voice to developing countries. If BRICS follows India's approach, it can promote cooperation among the developing countries. India could lead the grouping's engagement with the G7 to discuss ways to reform the international economic and financial system. India could lead BRICS towards discussing other global problems such as climate change. And therefore, any expansion will have to be based on certain principles. It will no doubt be subject of intensive consultations as the BRICS members gather to discuss the future. It is clear that China's ambitions within the bloc raise pivotal questions about its original purpose. And India's vision of multipolarity and cooperation among developing countries stands in sharp contrast to China's pursuit of global dominance. As the leaders convene and dialogues unfold at the BRICS summit, the world will be watching closely to see how this dance of interests actually plays out. Will the bloc's unity prevail over Chinese ambitions? Will BRICS stay true to its original mission? Or will it become a platform for competing narratives? The answers to these questions will not only shape the future of the participating countries, but also have broader implications for the evolving global order. So as China embarks on its pursuit to exploit the BRICS summit, it will be keeping a close eye on the actions and engagements of one country, and that's India. We just told you why. India and China, you see, have competing visions for the BRICS expansion. So Beijing essentially wants to dilute India's influence in the body. But is that the only reason? Not really. You see, China's intentions and opposition to India goes beyond BRICS. It fears that India could surpass it as a regional powerhouse. It fears that India could become the voice of the global south. The indications are already there. India is slowly but steadily replacing China in almost every metric: economic growth, diplomacy, and most importantly, manufacturing. Let's just look at them one at a time. And if I speak of economy specifically, 2 months ago, this report came out. It said that India is set to replace China as the quote-unquote high-flying geese, meaning it was set to unlock its full potential and outpace China in terms of economic growth. And around the same time, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development released a report. This one said that in the year 2023, India would grow faster than China. The figures are on your screen now. India's growth was predicted to be 6%. China was predicted to grow 5.4%. Indonesia, 4.7%. For 2024, the predictions get even more interesting. The report says India will grow 7% next year. China and Indonesia will grow by 5.1% each. What explains this? Why is India growing faster than China, you ask? Well, according to the agency, structural reforms undertaken by the Indian policymakers in recent years, along with higher allocation towards capital expenditure, have led to this trend. A trend that will persist for years to come. So this was about the economy. Next, we come to manufacturing. India is slowly replacing China as the world's factory, thanks to its labor force and a booming internal market. Also, its democratic credentials. They are making India a magnet for investors. The first win that India scored was through Apple. The company is betting big on India, and reports say it plans to shift 18% of its iPhone production to India by the year 2025. 18%, that's a big figure. And also a clear indication that the company wants to reduce its reliance on China. And why is it doing this? Because of China's policies and frequent protests by the Chinese workers. Last year, the company witnessed chaos at Foxconn's main iPhone City complex in Chengdu. The plant houses nearly 300,000 workers, and most of them went on strikes, protesting the COVID-19 curbs. And this severely affected the production of iPhones and dented China's reputation as a stable manufacturing center. Not just for Apple, by the way, but for a host of companies. Have a look at this report. Porsche, the renowned luxury sports car manufacturer, is looking to manufacture the Cayenne SUV in India. This development is striking, and it could pave the way for many other car manufacturers to do the same. And at the same time, this is highly embarrassing for China. Just 2 years ago, Porsche ruled out manufacturing in China because it did not want to compromise on the quality of its cars. Clearly, it has no such inhibitions in the case of India. And then we have technology. A host of leading laptop manufacturers are scrambling to assemble products in India. Reports say as many as 44 IT hardware manufacturers, including global PC makers, have registered for manufacturing laptops, tablets, and personal computers in India. And which companies are these, you ask? According to Counterpoint Research, Lenovo, HP, Dell, Apple and Acer were the top 5 companies in the personal computer segment in the June 2023 quarter. They all want to manufacture in India. And this is being seen as a big victory for the Make in India campaign and a big loss for a country which likes to call itself the world's factory. China. Is this why China is trying to corner India at platforms like the BRICS? This question gets even more interesting when you look at how China is performing. The economy is in the doldrums, to say the least. The GDP growth rate has slowed down. National debt is nearing the IMF red line. Youth unemployment is at a record high. And China's property giants are filing for bankruptcy protection. According to reports, China is likely to miss its growth target of 5% this year. The prediction has been made by several banking giants. JP Morgan Chase is one of them. It has further lowered its full-year forecast. China's Great Wall of Debt is also expanding. According to a new Forbes report, China's overall debt, both in the public and the private sector, has risen to a colossal $51.9 trillion. Next, we have unemployment. It is also at a record high. Reports say the urban employment rate for people between the ages of 16 and 24 has risen to 21.3%. This figure is so bad that Beijing has decided to not release figures anymore. I'm not making this up. Have a look at what The Guardian has said. China has suspended the release of youth unemployment figures. And then we come to the property sector. Reports say China is facing a housing market slump. Home prices have been falling for 16 months straight. Land sales, which account for 40% of all the local government revenue, also collapsed. Clearly, the China economic miracle is fading. And as it fades, China is growing more and more scared about another country taking over. For all practical purposes, Chinese experts fear that the country could be India. And now I have a question to ask. Has the Wagner Group become the world's richest and most dangerous industrial mercenary outfit? This question pops up courtesy a video of the Wagner chief. This one, it shows the Wagner chief, Yevgeny Prigozhin, dressed in combat gear from head to toe, singing praises of his motherland Russia. This video has apparently been shot in Africa, a place Yevgeny Prigozhin says he is making freer, and a place where he says he's making Russia even greater. You have to watch this.
Работаем.
We are working. The temperature is above 50 degrees Celsius, just how we like it. The Wagner Group is conducting RSA, making Russia even greater on every continent and Africa even freer.
Еще более свободной. Справедливость.
Justice and happiness for African people. We intimidate ISIS, Al-Qaeda and other bandits, hiding the real heroes and continuing to accomplish the tasks that have been set and that we promised we can handle.
Выполнение задач.
So where was this video shot? No one really knows. Prigozhin has not quite revealed the exact location. He could be anywhere. Sudan, Mali, even Niger. We'll get to that in just a bit. But first, let me ask the obvious question. How is Yevgeny Prigozhin still thriving? I mean, we are talking about a man who not only revolted against the Russian state, but also threatened to take over Moscow. He was supposed to be punished for his actions, but instead, he was sent into exile. His group's operations are not scrapped, and all of a sudden, he is re-emerging in Africa. I mean, how does any of this add up? Has Prigozhin become too powerful, even for Vladimir Putin? Is Putin afraid of punishing the Wagner chief? And if yes, then why? Is it because of how deeply involved Wagner is in Africa? Just have a look at the group's scale of operations. It provides services and paramilitary assistance in a host of African countries, but it is the most active in Libya, Mali, Central African Republic, Sudan, and Niger. And interestingly, all these countries have a tenuous relationship with the West. And this is mainly due to colonial legacies and inherent political differences. And what does Wagner do in these countries really? Well, its services vary based on the needs of the clients. In the Central African Republic, for that matter, Wagner troops defend the government from possible rebellions. The last instance being in 2018, when 1,000 Wagner troops defended an attack on the capital, and in return, they received unrestricted logging rights and control of a lucrative gold mine. In Sudan, the group has operated since 2017. It trains Sudanese troops in combat, guards the country's mineral resources, and suppresses dissent against the country's ruling dispensation. And in return, it has been able to secure smooth gold exports for Russia. For the unversed, Sudan is the 10th largest gold producer in the world. In Mali, the group reportedly supplements the Russian military. It also helps the logistical movement of the Russian entities and provides combat training to the Malian troops. And in Niger, the group has become a lifeline of sorts for the military junta. It is offering guidance on defensive strategies to the generals in case there is a military conflict. Now, for the unversed, Niger is the world's 7th largest producer of uranium. The West says the Wagner Group could be exploiting Niger's uranium resources. Simply put, the Wagner Group is crucial for Russia's hybrid warfare strategy on the African continent. It helps provide deniability for the Kremlin's actions. It serves as a proxy tool for military confrontations with the Western countries. And in other words, it acts as the Kremlin's quasi-state agent of influence. It skillfully uses its mercenaries to create strategic advantages for Moscow. It has become so entrenched in Africa that the Kremlin does not have a readily available replacement. So is this why the Wagner chief has been let loose? Is this why Putin has still not punished him, despite that coup? Well, it certainly seems to be the case. Europe stands at a pivotal moment, a time of reckoning. It is confronting a complex history marred by both progress and a haunting legacy of racism. From violent protests against racism that shook the streets of France to racially abusive posts directed towards members of Germany's under-21 soccer team, incidents of racism have cast a dark and undeniable shadow on 21st century Europe. But tonight, our focus narrows as we shift our gaze to Finland, a nation rattled by a series of unsettling racism scandals that have ignited a resounding call for action against the backdrop of Europe's colonial past. Symbols of hate and division are being challenged, and one Finnish lawmaker is leading those voices. Ben Zyskowicz, a Finnish MP from centre-right National Coalition Party, is pushing for a law to outlaw discrimination, armed with a vision that goes beyond condemning racism with just lip service. Also advocating for a game-changing move, a legislation that leaves no room for discrimination to breathe. He suggests banning the use of the swastika, a Nazi symbol, as well as the hammer and sickle. The proposed law wants to do away with symbols essentially that evoked pain and division for far too long. Think of the swastika and the hammer and sickle. The emblems have left scars in their wake. And this is not just talk, it's about action, about taking the bull by the horns. A series of racism scandals within the new Finnish government led to these calls for the ban. The Finnish MP essentially saying that it's not enough to merely condemn racism. A legislation must be adopted to outlaw discrimination. And his suggestion is on the ban on the use of the swastika and the hammer. The MP made the suggestion during an interview with Politico. He said, and I'm quoting, "It's very difficult to find real, concrete decisions which can be made by the government or by the parliament to fight against racism, and that is a real problem." But let's just zoom out for a minute. This calls for a new law. This call for a new law comes from a place of turmoil. You see, Finland's new government has not just faced one storm, it has been struck by 3 lightning bolts of racism in a span of just over 2 months. It began with the economy minister's exit due to Nazi-linked comments. The deputy prime minister, Rikapura, later came under fire for making racist comments in online blog posts published in the year 2008, yet she did not resign. And then Junila's replacement, Will Reitman, was revealed to have used racial slurs in private messages with his then girlfriend. It is a 3-part saga that has left the country stunned. But the Finnish MP's proposition is part of a broader collection of ideas drawn up by a new working group to fight against discrimination and racism. It has been set up by the Prime Minister. The new Finnish PM says that he has zero tolerance policy for racism and extremism, and now the Finnish Parliament gears up for a heated debate in early September. Those advocating for the ban recount moments when these symbols were wrested away from the perpetrators of racism, like the swastika flags that were removed from a group of neo-Nazi protesters in Helsinki back in the year 2018. There is a rallying cry for concrete anti-racism measures. It's a call to arm against racism and intolerance. But pause for a moment here. Will just banning these symbols actually uproot the seeds of racism? It is a question that hangs heavy in the air. It is a challenge that underscores complexities of modern Europe. Europe is yet to acknowledge that racism exists in the continent, especially now with the rise of the far-right politicians. And let's be honest, the direction taken by some of these right-wing European parties has played a very serious role in spreading the poison of racism. Demonstrations and meetings by far-right so-called patriotic Europeans, like the Alternative for Germany party, has spread and further entrenched these sentiments. Incidents of racism coming out almost every month from European states, in fact, especially the big ones like France and Germany. The far right in Europe still amounting to a ticking time bomb. If they call themselves democracies, then they must defuse this very bomb. The establishment of the EU Anti-Racism Action Plan and the appointment of Michaela Moa as the first EU Anti-Racism Coordinator do bring some hope, but we need to talk about racism and European nations need to act against it. It's always possible to change the reality on the ground when there is will. Ironically, the motto of the European Union is united in diversity. And the question is, will it live up to these words? And here's a situation where our heart is likely to skip a beat. Imagine being stranded in a cable car. There were 2 cables holding that car, but one of them snapped. It's a matter of time before the remaining cable snaps too from the weight. What would you do? Apart from panicking. 6 school children in Pakistan were stranded in a dangling cable car for over 9 hours. They were going to school and they took the cable car just like they would every morning. Little did the students know what fate had in store for them. Our next report bringing you all the details.
This is Pakistan's Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. It is mountainous, underdeveloped. Not every part of this province is connected by roads or even bridges. So often, you will find people using cable cars to commute. This morning, 6 children boarded a cable car to to get to school in the province's Battagram town. With them were two adults. Little did anyone know what fate had in store for them. Midway into the ride, a wire or two of the car snapped. The passengers found themselves stranded in the middle of nowhere. They were dangling from the sky. Below them was a deep gorge and the narrow Jangri River. It was a matter of time before the sole cable holding the car would snap too from the weight. The children were petrified. One of them fainted. It was 7 a.m. in the morning. Not many realized what was happening in the skies. Thankfully, there was mobile network, and the two adults aboard the cable car had handsets. Calls were made. Authorities were informed about the plight of the stranded passengers. 2 helicopters were dispatched. Soon, this footage emerged, a rescuer trying to reach the dangling cable car and rescue the passengers. Alas, he wasn't successful. At least 2 attempts to rescue the stranded passengers failed. The wind was gusty. There were other hurdles in the path, like the lone cable holding the car coming in the way of the rescue operation. Pakistan's local media began calling up the stranded passengers. One of them said at least 2 students were slipping in and out of consciousness. Time clearly was not in favor of the rescuers. Day turned into afternoon, and soon the sun would be setting, making the rescue operation extremely difficult, if not impossible. One passenger asked, "Tell us why the helicopters are going back. Where will we get help from? We need drinking water." The local residents were helplessly looking at the dangling car. There was not much they could do. The ordeal went on for over 9 hours before one child was brought to the ground, and then another. This story will not end with the rescue operation. What's the guarantee that such an incident will not repeat itself? Pakistan, after all, is infamous for negligence. One local school teacher told the media that at least 150 students at this school take the risky cable car ride to school every day. Education cannot come at such a great cost, can it? Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
The Spain women football team just made history. It beat England 1-0 in the World Cup final in Sydney. But that's not the focus of this story. Instead, the focus is on Spain's football chief, Luis Rubiales. He has tarnished the historic win for everyone. How exactly? Here's what happened. Spain had scored its victory. The team was collecting their gold medals amid the joy, amid the celebrations. Luis Rubiales grabbed midfielder Jenny Hermoso by her head and planted an unwelcome kiss on her lips. Can you believe that? That's not all. He also aggressively hugged multiple players, which was quite uncomfortable to watch, to say the least. This invasion of privacy was going on a live platform with millions watching. Just how entitled do you need to be to do something like this? Isn't this a shameless display of abuse of power? Another clip showed Rubiales interrupting a group of Spanish players celebrating and kissing Olga Carmona on the cheek. I really wish Rubiales would have stopped just there, but he did not. He promised the champion team a holiday to Ibiza, saying that he would marry Hermoso there. And let's not forget his crotch-grabbing celebration in the stands during the game. Soon after the unwelcome kiss, Hermoso said on a live stream that she did not like it. She also added, and I'm quoting, "But what can I do?" An unidentified male member of the staff then asked Hermoso if Rubiales used his tongue. Can you imagine that? An international player who just won the World Cup got kissed on a live platform without her consent, and she felt so helpless that she said or asked, what could she do? Does being the leader of a football federation give Rubiales a free pass? Soon, the video of the unwanted kiss circulated online. Naturally, it sparked outrage at home and abroad. Spain's acting sports minister, Miquel Iceta, described the gesture as unacceptable. He also demanded that Rubiales offer an explanation and apology. Many on social media, in fact, called for Luis Rubiales to step down, to resign. Here's what the Minister of Equality in the caretaker government, Irene Montero, said on the platform X. She described the incident as a form of sexual violence that we women suffer on a daily basis and until now has been invisible, quote unquote. She goes on to say, I'm quoting further, we cannot normalize this. Of course we cannot. But you see, that did not stop Spain's football chief from trivializing or downplaying the entire incident. That's right, he dismissed the outcry saying, and I'm quoting, we should not pay attention to idiots and stupid people. Quoting further, it was a peck between two friends celebrating something. You heard that right. Instead of apologizing, Rubiales defended his forceful kiss. And as the word spread, Jenny Hermoso also changed her statement. She also downplayed the entire incident. She said, and I'm quoting, it was a totally spontaneous mutual gesture because of the immense joy that winning a World Cup brings. The President and I have a great relationship. His behavior with all of us has been outstanding. And it was a natural gesture of affection and gratitude. But we are not going to victim blame here. Players face pressure from the federation. They are asked to keep it together while giving out press statements. They are forced to do PR. Maybe that is what Hermoso is doing. And that makes the entire incident a lot more unfortunate. Luis Rubiales had to cave in when the pressure mounted. He posted a video apology. This is what he said. I have no choice but to apologize and to learn from this. And when representing the federation, take more care. He adds, certainly I made a mistake and I have to acknowledge that. It was done without any ill intention in a moment of the highest exuberance. Here we saw it as natural and normal, but outside it has caused a commotion. You see, Rubiales still feels he has done nothing wrong. He still is trying to justify his action as celebration, as a gesture of affection. But nobody is buying it. And the question is, would he have acted in the same way if it was a male player? Would he have kissed him on the lips as well? No, this type of celebration is reserved, it seems, only for women because it's not celebration at all, but outright abuse, violation of privacy, disregard for consent. Spain's World Cup victory is a first, but the abuse is not, unfortunately. Just last year, 15 players refused to play for the head coach, Jorge Vilda. They complained about his tactics, the training methods and management style. At the time of the boycott, Vilda called the accusations unjust. The Spanish Football Federation also maintained its support for him. You see, this is the treatment international women players receive. And it's just heartbreaking to watch. Are aliens real? At this very moment, astronomers are waiting for a message from space which could answer that question. That's right. A reply to a message which was sent out into the universe 4 decades ago. Drawings depicting the history of life on Earth were sent into the cosmos. But will we get a reaction to those images is the question. Will another life form send something similar to us? We may just get the answer tonight. In the year 1983, Stanford University, a group of professors used an antenna to send bursts of radio signals into space. The signals contained information about us, human beings. It had 13 images of what human beings look like. We'll tell you more about that in just a bit. Let's just cut straight across to the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's address at the BRICS Business Forum in Johannesburg.
In South Africa, our very first engagement is the BRICS Business Forum.
सबसे पहले मैं
First and
राष्ट्रपति
foremost,
रामाफोसा को उनके निमंत्रण और इस बैठक के आयोजन के लिए बहुत-बहुत धन्यवाद देता
this
हूं।
meeting,
ब्रिक्स बिजनेस काउंसिल
my heartiest congratulations and best wishes on the 10th anniversary of the BRICS Business Council.
पिछले 10 वर्ष
In the last 10 years, the BRICS Business Council has played a vital role in enhancing our economic cooperation. In 2009, when the first BRICS summit was held, the world was just coming out of a massive financial crisis. At that time, BRICS emerged as a ray of hope for the global economy. In the present times also, amongst the COVID pandemic, tensions and disputes, the world is dealing with economic challenges. In such times, once again, the role of BRICS countries is important. Friends, despite volatility in global economy, India is the world's fastest growing major economy. Very soon, India will become a $5 trillion economy. There is absolutely no doubt that in the coming years, India will be the growth engine of the world. And the reason for this is that India has converted crises and difficulties into opportunities for economic improvements. In the last few years, we have carried out reforms in mission mode, and these reforms have helped in continuously improving ease of doing business in India. We have also reduced the compliance burden. We have removed red tape and instead laid the red carpet. There has been a boost in investor confidence due to introduction of GST and the implementation of the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. Areas such as defense and space that were considered restricted have today been opened up for the private sector. We have laid special focus on public service delivery and good governance. By leveraging technology, India has taken a massive leap towards financial inclusion. The maximum benefit of this has reached our women in rural India. Today, with one click, millions of people in India get direct benefit transfers. So far, more than $360 billion of such transfers have been made. This has increased transparency in service delivery and reduced corruption and middlemen. India has the cheapest per gigabyte cost. Today, in India, from street vendors to large shopping malls, all use UPI, that is, the Unified Payments Interface. Today, India is the country with the highest number of digital transactions in the world. Countries like UAE, Singapore, France are also joining this platform. There are several possibilities of working on this with BRICS countries also. The large-scale investment being done on infrastructure in India is changing the country's landscape. In this year's budget, we have kept a provision of approximately $120 billion for infrastructure. By way of this investment, we are laying a strong foundation for a new India of the future. Rapid changes are coming into effect in all areas of railways, roads, waterways, and airways. Today, in India, new highways are being constructed at a speed of 10,000 kilometers per year. The number of airports has doubled in the last 9 years. We have implemented the production-linked incentives with an objective to promote investment and production, with logistics costs reducing. The manufacturing sector of India is becoming competitive. India is amongst world leaders in the area of renewable energy. We are taking active steps to make India a global manufacturing hub in areas such as solar energy, wind energy, electric vehicles, green hydrogen, and green ammonia. It is but natural that with this, India will become a huge market for renewable technology. Today, India has the world's third largest startup ecosystem. There are more than 100 unicorns in India currently in areas such as IT, telecom, fintech, AI, and semiconductors. We are moving forward with a vision of Make in India, Make for the World. All of these efforts have directly had a positive impact on the lives of common people. In the last 9 years, the income of people has increased approximately 3 times. Women's participation in the economic development of India has been significant. From IT to space, from banking to healthcare, women have worked shoulder to shoulder with men and are contributing to the country's progress. The people of India have resolved to become a developed nation by 2047. Friends, I invite all of you to be a part of India's development journey. The COVID pandemic has taught us the importance of resilience and inclusive supply chains. For this, mutual trust and transparency are extremely important. By bringing our strengths together, we can make significant contributions to the welfare of the world, especially the global south. Excellencies, once again, I congratulate the leaders of the BRICS business world for their contribution. I also thank my friend, President Ramaphosa, for his excellent arrangements for this meeting. Thank you very much.
I'd like to thank Prime Minister Dhanyavad. Thank you.
Prime Minister Modi there calling India the world's growth engine, talking about how the digital India movement has grown by leaps and bounds, and also talking about the impact that this has had on women in the country. We will get you the key takeaways from that address and also the latest on the BRICS summit in just a short bit. For now, we're taking a short break. It's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas Tonight, leaving you with Gravitas images. Thanks very much for watching.
It's easy to tell you a flat story. It's easy to show you what's happening around the world. We do the difficult part.
This weapon has been banned